So these dot states, let's talk about React states. React components has a built-in state object. The state object is where you store property values that belongs to that particular component. So when the state object changes, the React component re-renders. So how do you create state objects? The state object is initialized in the constructor function, in the constructor here. So this is an example. Let's say we want to specify the color, and we also want to have the brand. We can do brand. You can see this is an object. Brand equals Toyota. So if I save this now, and let's say we are not using props, inside here we are not using props. So if I save this now, we are going to have some. So inside there, I save this now. No, we have. You can see that I am a car. I am of brand nothing, because these props are not being passed again. So to use this state, you have to do this dot state inside of props here. You do this dot state dot color and this dot state dot brand. If I save this now and we go back, you see that we have I am a blue car. I am of brand Toyota. So the state object can contain as many properties as you like. So you can specify your properties as you want. So let's say instead of just two, we have another one like we have the color, we have the brand, we have the, what else can we have? The model. Let's say we have the model, which is Toyota, then we have Camry, then we have the year. Yes, let's say we have the year and it's 2015. So if I save this now, let's have this on different lines. Let me just increase this. Yeah. So you can see that we have as many properties and values as possible. You can have tons of properties here. So you can actually use them like I am of Kinikon, all those. So you can actually, I don't want to take much of our time. So how do you use state objects? You can refer to the state object anywhere in the component by using this dot state dot property name, probably color, brand, model. So if I come here now and I do, let's do paragraph, and I do this, make sure it is inside curly brackets because you are writing JavaScript inside HTML. So you can do this dot state dot year. So if I do this dot state dot year and I save now, if I come back here, you see 2015. How cool is that? So that is one of the beauty of React components. So we can just do, let's change this so that it makes sense. I can say I am of brand, state of brand, and what else can we say? State of brand. Then let's add brand Toyota Camry. This dot state dot model. Yeah. Let's do from, just to make sense of this data. So if I save this now, and I go back to my own page, you can see that I am of brand Toyota. So the question now is, let's say I want to be changing this. How do you change state objects? To change a value in the state object, you have to use a method called this.setState. So when a value in the state object changes, the component is going to re-render, meaning that the output will change according to the new values. So let us add a button to this so that you understand what I'm trying to drive at. So let's say I want to have a button, and the button is going to be under this. So I want to have a button, and inside this button, I just want to change color. So if I save this now, and we go back here, you see that we have a button, but presently the button is doing nothing. If I click on it, it's doing nothing. So how do we do it? So that whenever we click on this, we change the color of the car. So how do you do it? So that is how, that is when this set state is going to come in. So, and if you remember, we have our event listener in the DOM. So let's say this type is going to be, the button is going to be of button of type, and what else can we have? The on click, so that when I click, it's going to, you know, it's going to trigger this dot change color. So you can call this any name. So I'm calling this change color. Then you come over here and you're going to write a function for that. So before the render, you say my change color is going to be a function that returns something. What's it going to return? It's going to change the color of this. So it's going to be this dot set state. So you are setting the state. So what do you want to change? The color. So change only the color. So if I do to what? Change it to red. So change it to red whenever the button is clicked. So if I go back here, you see that we have blue already. So if I do, you see that it has changed. So you can actually toggle. So how do you toggle? You know, you can actually write a function for that. So that is how to change the values in the states. So always use set state method to change the state objects. I can actually change, let's say we want to change more than two things. So we want to change the brand name to, so we don't want Toyota, we want to call it, what can we call it? Peugeot. I don't know how to spell Peugeot. I won't use that. We can use Oma. I think I know how to spell that. So if I save this now, and you know, if I come here now, we have blue, and if I click change color, everything has changed. You see that? I can also change the year. So let's just make this make sense. So instead of change color, I can change data. And we can call this change data so that it makes sense. We can call this change data. And I want to change the year too. So let's change the year to year 2020. So change it to 2020 on click. So if I save this now and I go back to the website, you see that we have, oh, I wrote change date instead of change data. I'm not hungry. So if I save this now and I come back here, we have, you know, our initial states. So we have I am blue car, Toyota Camry from 2015. So if I click this button now, everything has changed. You know, that is much more easier than manipulating the DOM and all those. It is very, very easier. So we have, you know, you can always use the set method to change the state object. It will ensure that the component knows it has been updated. And it's going to call the render method, you know, and all other lifecycle methods, which you can read more about. So everything is going to get updated. So how about React events? You know, I just did something now, and you'll be like, Ridwan, this is on click. What is happening? So just like HTML, React can perform actions based on users' events. React has the same event as, you know, click, change, mouse over, you know, key press, and all those. So how do you add events? React events are written in camel case. So, you know, in HTML, if you want to add events, you do something like on click. But in React, it's going to be in camel case. On click, if you want to do on mouse over, you do on mouse over. You see, it's going to be in camel case. So instead of, you know, the normal way you used to write it. So let's say we want to like, let's add another button. So just to show you this. So let's say we want to add event handlers, you know. Okay, we already have one. Let's use this. So you can see that we have on click, and the event handlers are going to be written inside curly brackets, just like this. You can see that we have curly brackets. So on click, then we have this curly brackets. So if this bracket is clicked, then whatever function you have here is going to get called and is going to perform whatever operations you put here. So we can actually perform different, let's say, we can console.log something out, console.log this this button, oops, this button is clicked. So if I save, let's comment this out just so you see. So if I save this now, and we go back to our application and we check the console. So if I click this button, let's see, go back to the console. So let's clear this off. So if I click the button now, see, this button is clicked. You can see it. I'm clicking it multiple times. And where is it getting clicked? You can see car.js. So how beautiful that is. So a good practice is to put events handlers as method, just like this. We can actually write this one line, instead of having like this, I can just say, I can just do something like this, then return console.log, this is clicked. But it looks messy. So the best thing is what? Have it outside. So if I delete this now and I save, this is going to run as usual. So I can just do, okay. So if I come here now and refresh, so if I go to the console, let's clear this, and I click this, you see that it's getting clicked. So a good practice is to put the event handlers in a method. So I'm just going to undo this. You still have a long way to go. You have to put them in a method in component class. So let's say I want to create a new folder called football.js, a new component called football. And I'm going to use my class, React class components. Sorry, I have to use my, what's it called? My shortcuts. Okay, I'll see. So I have a shortcut I use, and don't mind me. And here I'm going to have my, before the render, I'm going to have my shoot method. And okay, before that, let's say we have a button. So we are returning a button here. I just want to show us the event at last. And we have a button, and inside this button, take a shot. So I'm saying take a shot. When you click, takes a shot, and this is going to unclick. If you click on this button, then it should, you should call this function, which is this dot shoot. And this dot shoot, what does it do? I'll say shoot, and inside there it should alert something for me. And what do I want it to alert? This is a great shot. So if I save this now and I go back into my, let's go back into this app component. I don't need this again. So I'm just showing you, like, you can have many components as much as possible. So I'm importing football from where? From components, and inside the components, then football. So I'm going to delete this because I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to call the football component here. If I call this here and I save, I save. So let's go to the home page. We have take a shot. So if I click on this now, you see that. So it's getting rendered, it's getting called. So that is that about that. And what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? So how do you pass arguments? If you want to send parameters into an event handler, you have two options. The first option is to make an anonymous arrow function, and the second function is to use the bind the event handler. So actually, this is a bad practice. It's a good practice back in the days, but we are thinking of ways to make this easier for us. So I'm not going to show us the bind and all those. So I'm going to show us how to, like, write, send parameters into an event um, handler. So if I go back into my football.js file, so here I can say if I want to send an event, I will say should this is going to take an event. So yeah, it's going to take an event and it's going to return something back. So let's just alert something. So alert the event that you take in, and here I can say this does shoot, then take this. So if I save this now and we go back into the console, we see that I have this gets run immediately. So it gets run once. So it's because I'm calling it directly here with a parameter, with an argument. So that is that. And what else can I show us? Okay, so let's talk about React event objects. Event handlers have access to the React events that trigger that function. So in our example, the event is the click event. And notice that once again, this syntax is different from, when you are using arrow functions. So with the arrow function, you have to send the event argument manually. But the other option, which is using the bind method, which I said, to save us time, I'm not going to show that because, you might not be using that in 2020 and, going forward. So using arrow function, if you want to send events manually, you can do something like, let's say this is going to receive A and B, and it's going to alert, let's say B dot type, and here, you know, here we are going to say this is goal, and the second thing is going to be the event, and this is going to, on click is going to take the event, it's going to take an event, and this is going to return something. So it's going to return this dot shoot. So if I save this now, and before I go into the browser, I just want to talk about this B that I actually, B, which is event. It represents the React event that triggered this particular function. In this case, the click event. So if I save this now, and I go back here, and I click here, you see that click is actually, so that is what I did on this particular button, which is click. So it takes the event and outputs the event to us. So without arrow function, the React event object is sent automatically as the last argument when using the bind method. So you can actually read more about bind. So which I'm going to type over here. So it is bind. So you can read more about bind, just so you see what it's all about. So, but I'm not going to talk about that in this particular section because we don't have much time. So, what else can we do? Okay, another question is, how do we add forms in React? Probably you have a website you built it with React, you want to add a login page or sign up page or any other page whereby you need forms. So how do we add forms in React? So just like HTML, React uses forms to allow users to interact with the web page. You add a form with React like any other element. So let's just create a new component, and so I just want to have different components because I just want to show us like you can have many components and you can render many components based on what you need. So let's say I have a component. Let's call this my form. This dot JS, and here I'm going to say this is going to be a class component. I'll say React class component. So this is just a short form. I have a plugin I'm using for this that makes me to create React syntax is very fast. So you can actually check that out. So if you go to extension, you can search for React. I'm coming. So you can search for React Redux extension. So you can actually use this and it's going to give you the snippets. So it makes coding very fast for me. So instead of typing all this one after the other, so the only thing I just have to do is I'll come here. If I want to write functional components, we add functional component export. You see it's RFCE. So if I type this now, it gives me all this and I can start writing my components. But now I want to write React components. So React components export, no, React component. And here I have to export. Okay, it has that by default. So this is another way to actually export a component. You can see it, export default class component, or you can actually bring this down if you want. So most times I prefer to have it down. You know, it makes my code easier to read for me anyway. So if I do this, it's the same thing. And if I do it the way it was given to me, it's the same thing. So here, I want to add a form. So I can just say, same way we used to do it, I will say form. And inside this form, I want to have, oops. So inside this form, I want to have h1 tag that says hello, this is a form. And I want to have another p tag, and this p tag will say enter your name. And I want to have an input just to collect input from the users. So here we'll say input, and you must close this. So what is the type of the input? It's test. You remember this from our HTML section. So if I want it to be password, you know, instead of using test, I will use password. So let's save this. So if I save this now, if you go to the home page, nothing is there because we are yet to, you know, inject that into our component. So instead of having football here, I'll just change this to my form. Oops. My form. So if I save this now and we go back to the home page, let's see what we have. Yeah, we have hello, this is a form. And here you can see that I did type test. So that means inputting my name, this is read one. And if I change this type test to password, you know what that means. So if I do password, you already know this from the HTML section. So this is a password, you know, it's not going to change. I can also change it to email. So we don't have to go into much details about that. Let me go back to my file. So another thing is, how do you handle forms? Handling forms is all about, you know, how you handle data when it changes value or it gets submitted. So in HTML, form data is usually handled by the DOM, but in React, form data is usually handled by the components. So when the data is handled by the component, all the data is stored in the component state. If you remember, I talked about state the other time. You can control changes by adding event handlers in the unchanged attributes. So let's do an example. So let's add an event handler in the unchanged attribute and let the event handler update the state object as you are typing. So let's say, you know, we are going to have a constructor. We're going to have a constructor, and this constructor is going to call super, and we have props. Probably we might be passing props. So let's write props, and in here we have this dot state. The initial state is going to be username, and it is empty. So it's going to be empty, and you know, we are going to say hello. So we are going to want to call the name. So we can say hello, then pass in the whatever the username we have. So that is why you see hello Ridwan. If you log into Facebook, they'll call your name, hello something, hello this, hello that. So I forgot to tell us, like, Facebook was built with React. Twitter was built with React. Instagram, they use React. For Instagram application, they use React Native. A lot of applications are using React. And I learned that, I think some months back, Microsoft actually adopted React. So that means they want to be using React to be building the applications. So imagine you are learning the software that companies are now using to build their applications. So that is why I say this is very, very useful for you to learn. And that is why I'm bringing it to us. So let's say, so we want to add on change so that whenever this change, whenever someone types something in, this should change. Oops. You know, this should call a function. And what can we call this function? We can call this change handler. Yeah, that is descriptive enough. Then you come here, you know, before the render, you are going to say change handler, and this is going to receive an event, and this, you know, is going to return. We want this to change the state. So you are going to say this dot set state, and anytime the state changes, you know, change the username to whatever the events dot target dot value that we have. So if I save this now, I know you might be confused, like, you know, what's going on here? You are seeing some things like you've not been seeing before, but don't worry, let's run this and let's see what we have. So if I change this now, I have, you see that hello, nothing is there. So if I start typing Ridwan, you see that how beautiful, Balogun. So you see this, it's saying hello Ridwan. As you are typing, something is changing. I'm deleting, it's getting deleted already. So if I say, who else can we introduce? Let's say we want to say hello Adedipo, Adedipo. You see that I can say hello Sonny. You see that it's getting typed as I'm typing, you know, real life. That's it. How cool this is. So I can say hello Ibrahim. You see this. So then another thing is you have to initialize the state in the constructor. You have to initialize the state. So I can put this already, like, okay, I want the initial state to be read one. So if I load my app, by default it's going to be read one. But when I change this to Balogun, you know, you see that. So I can say, you can add anything here, but I just want the username to be, so that whenever someone signs in, I don't want them to have a name. So you can actually have a condition here, like if, so you can have a condition here, like if, you know, this dot state dot username equals to, if it is empty, if it is equals to empty, then what do you want it to do? Then do something. Or you can, best thing to do is you can use ternary operator here, like this dot state dot username is equals to empty. If this is the case, then return, please enter your name. If it is not empty, then return this dot state dot username. So if I save this now, let's see what's going to happen. You see that, please enter your name. But if I start typing my name, Ridwan, how cool that is. That is beautiful. So don't worry, our form looks very ugly now, but I'm still going to show us how to like add CSS to React. Then another thing I want to show us is this React, this event.target.value. You know, you get access to the view, to the value of the field by using events.target.value. Let's do something here. So if I do console.log, let's do console.log events, and let's see what we have. So if I do console.log events, and we come over here, let's see what we have in the console. So if we go to the console, so we don't have any errors, and I start typing here. If I do R, you see that I typed R, and you see we have, the event is just an object, huge object, and we have a target, which is this. So if I go back into my code, let's do event.targets and see what we have. So you can actually read more about this. Event.targets, let's console.log that out. I refresh, I save that, and let's clean this. So if I type R read one, you see this. We are getting our input field back, but we want the value inside that field. So that is why we are saying event.target.value. So if I say .value here and I save, and this gets refreshed. So let me just put this to 100 or 150. So if I type something here now, you see that it's getting, the value is getting printed on the console. You see that read one Balogun read bay. You see that how cool that is. As I'm deleting, the event.target.value is getting updated, and it's updating our state, and the state is getting rendered here. So that is that. And another thing I want to talk about is conditional rendering. If you do not want, I've actually did that here, but let me just give us another example. So let's say you do not want to display this H1 element until the user has done any input. You can add an if-else statement. You can use ternary operators and some other operators you think, JavaScript operators you think you might use. So let's change this. I just want to change this to, to give us another method to write this. So I can just say, my render method, I can say let greeting equals empty value, and I can just put this out, or let's write an if statement, just so that you see that you can also use any JavaScript conditional. So if username, if this is present, if this is not empty, then set greeting to what? Greeting should equals to h1, then you can say hello, then this dot state dot username, and else if that is not the case, then set greeting to what? To empty, back to empty, to the way it is. So after writing this, I can just come into my code here. I have the form, then I will just delete this because I've handled that in that conditional statement. I'll just say greeting, whatever the greeting is, then put it here. So if I save this now, so if I save this now and I go back to my, oops, I have unterminated regular expression. Okay, what happened? If this is the case, then this, if that is the case, then this, okay. You can see the error here. So I forgot to add, yeah. So if I save now, okay, so you can see that there's nothing here. So if I start typing, you see that it displays immediately. I'm very sure you must have been seeing this kind of behavior in some applications. Like, it is when you are typing, that is when something will just come up, and a user, it will be getting updated like as you are typing. So you can actually use this in many applications. You can even build your own, what's it called, your blog with this. Like, okay, when user types the title, you can say title equals, let's do something like that. Because I actually love playing around. But wait, don't let us eat. I can give us as an assignment. So what is happening here? We created an empty variable, and we call it greeting. We added an if statement to insert, content to the greeting variable. If the user has done any input, we insert the greeting variable in the output using curly brackets here. So nothing too serious, and that is that. So another question now is, how do you submit forms in React? You know, you can control the submit action by adding an event handler in the onSubmit attribute. So let's add a submit button to our form. And here I can say, what can we say? What type of, so we need to add a button. So I can say the inputs is going to be, oops, this is an element. So it's going to be of type submit. I hope you remember this from our HTML section. This is of type test, and this is of type submit. And you know, in our form, let's return this to the way we have it before. We have h1, and this h1 will say something like hello, then whatever the username is. This dot state dot username, and let's close this. And you know, we have enter your name and submit. Yeah, so that the user will know. And we have the unchanged, we have the change handler. Then here, let's submit our form. So as you remember, we are going to use camel casing for that action, submit, and we are going to have a handler for this too. So let's do this dot submit handler. So once you do that, let's remove this because we don't need it again. So you come here, you are going to define what action is going to, get triggered when the user click on the submit. So we are going to say submit handler, and this is going to take the events, and after taking the events, it's going to perform this operation. And we have something called event dot prevent default. Don't worry, I will show you what this means. So it is very common when you are using React to do this. Then we are going to alert. So let's alert. Whatever the user submits. So let's say you are submitting. So let's output what the user is submitting. This dot state dot username. So you are submitting whatever username the user inputs. So if I save this now and we go back to our form, you see that we have the submit button already, and I can say read one. So I am doing two actions here. So if the user is typing something, I want it to be shown. Then if they click on submit, I want another action to get performed. So if I do submit, you see they are submitting read one. So let's just add some space to this so that it is well formatted. So if I save this now and I come back, it's going to get refreshed. Did I save that? I save Ctrl S. So let's see what's going to happen. So let's come back here. I click this, get refreshed. So if I say read one now and I click submit, you are submitting read one. You see that? So that is how to. Another thing I want to explain is this event dot prevent default. So if I actually comment this out, let's see what's going to happen. So if I do read one and I click on submit, click OK, you see that gets reload. It's going to delete our, what's it called? It's going to reload the page, but we don't want that to get, let's say you want to allow users to log in into your application, and once they click on enter, then the next thing, once they click on sign in, the next thing they see is reload that page. You don't want that. So if you had event.prevent, so this prevent default is going to prevent the default behavior of that browser. So if I do this now, and I come back here and I do read one, and I click, let me do read one B, and I click on this, you see that we still have our form, and I click on this, we still have the data there retained. But if I comment this out, let's assume I don't add this, and we come here, and I do read one, and I submit. you see that it's going to reload, and you don't want that to happen. So that is why we are preventing this, so that we don't lose any data. So that is that. So the event prevent defaults is used to prevent the form from actually being reloaded every time we click the submit button. So what if we have multiple input fields? How do we control the values? You can control the values of more than one input field by adding a name attribute to each element. So when you initialize the state in the constructor, you use the field names. To access the field names in the event handler, you use event.target.name. And you can also use event.target.value syntax. So to update the state in the set states, you can use the brackets notation around the property name. So I'm going to show us what all this means. So let's write a form with 2 inputs. So presently we are accepting, what do we accept in the state? We are accepting username. Let's say we want to accept age and username, age, and their email. Yeah, let's do this. So let's say we want to accept email too. So let's say this is going to be empty initially. And we are going to define that. We say, so I'm going to copy this. So we need their age. We need their, what's it called? What else do we need? We need age. We need email. So this is going to be outside email. And you can actually use a placeholder so that they know what we have. So a placeholder, this is going to be what can we use here? Your name, and here we can use a placeholder. Basically this is just HTML. So we can say your age, and here your email. So if I save this now, let's see what we have on the home page. We have this on the home page. So if I'm typing, you can see that something is actually getting wrong. So whenever I'm typing this replaces the other one. So if I do read one, we don't want this to happen. What we want is the data to be, to get updated individually. So how do we do this? So to do this, you have to go back to your, change handler. So in here, let me just delete this console because we don't need it again. So in here, I'm going to say let name be equals to events dot targets dot name, and I can say here let age equals to events dot, or the value, the name and value, the value, so equals to event dot target dot value. So in this state, I'm going to say take the name. If it is the name, take the name and change it to whatever value that is passed in. So if the name of the form is that, so I'm going to come here and add a name attribute. So the name of this is what? The name of this is going to be, what can we use? Let's use username. So the name is going to be username, and the name of this particular input is going to be age. And the name of this particular input is going to be email. So what I'm saying here is take, the event.target.name. So it might be username, set it to event.target.value. So whatever I type inside this design name, the value should be passed into the name and saved inside this set state, inside this state object. So And let's save this. So if I come back here, let me put all of them inside a different, what's it called? So we are going to do br. Let's add a break so that, you know, they have different lines since we are not using CSS for now. So if I save this now, you see it. So if I type name, read one, and you can see that here we are saying hello, only the username. So if I type in other things like my age, let's say my age is 12, you see that it's not getting re-rendered. My email is, let's say, balogun@gmail.com. And if I click the submit, they are submitting read one, because inside this submit handler, we are only alerting the username. So if I want to print out hello read one, I can say hello read one, you are these dots. So you can see sometimes it's kind of boring, right? Typing and typing this dot, that all over again. So I can just come here, I can say const username, oops, from the object, const username, then the age, then email. I want to use object destructuring dot states. So here, instead of saying user, I can say this username, I can delete this dot states because I have destructured it from there. So you are age, years old, and your email is email. So if I save this now, sorry. So if I save this now, let's see what we have. So hello, because we've not passed anything here. You are dash years old because we've not passed anything here. So we can use conditionals for this, like until the user is typing, then display this. But for now, let's say hello read one. You are 12 years old and your email is Balogun. You can see that. So we can actually use conditionals to to render this. So I can say, in here, the H1 should be, we can use conditionals. If username is equals to this empty, or and let's use and age is equals to null, and email is equals to empty. If this is true, then don't display anything. Else, if it is false, display, whatever we have here. So we can actually pass this inside template literals. So we can add this inside template literals. This is JavaScript, so you can perform all JavaScript operations. So if I save this now, do we have any error? No error. So this gets re-rendered. So if this is empty, oops. So we need to like recheck our, what's it called? Our conditioner and make sure like all the conditions are passed. So if this is empty, so instead of using and let's try or age is empty, or email is empty. So don't pass anything, empty string. So let's try this again. So read one, you see that is not coming up. I can say read one, and next I can say my age is 10, and next my email is read one. It is when everything is completed that you are going to see this. So if I delete this now, everything is gone. So how beautiful that is. So this is one of the powers of React. React is very, very beautiful. Very, very, very beautiful. So how cool that is. Then if I submit, you can actually change whatever you want the submit and handlers to submit. So you are submitting the username, the password. You can also come here and destructure the state. So instead of passing this dot username, this dot password, this dot this dot that, you can just come here, destructure that, and say username, then let's say age, then what else? Email. So let's print this out. So that is why I said you must, it is a must for you to understand the ES6 syntaxes, the destructuring, array destructuring, object destructuring, and all those. So let's say my age is 12, my name is Ridwan, my email is this, and I click submit. You see, you are submitting Ridwan 12 Balogun. So how cool that is. So here, inside this handler, change handler, we use the same event handler function for both, for all the inputs. We could write one event handler for each, but this gives us much cleaner code, and it is the preferred way in React. So another thing we can actually delve into before we call it a day is how to validate form. I think time is gone. This is 6:16, so we can actually do this some other time. So the last thing I want to talk about today is we've been writing our React form and React components, and everything looks pretty ugly. So we already know how to bring in CSS and add CSS styling to our HTML codes. But what if we want to add CSS styling to what was it called? Our React. So how do we style React? So let me make this a different section that we after this we